have a gap analysis. So the gap between what they're expecting and what you can deliver is the middle ground that needs to be filled. And at that point in time, things like budgets, constraints, seem to dissipate. What you now have is an opportunity to come together in agreement. And if you don't have an RTO plan in your IT center, I couldn't encourage you more than to actually have that conversation and lead off that discussion. That plan will be a valuable tool when one of a number of things happen. They will happen. It's not a point, will they happen? They will happen. It's when they will happen, okay? And we're going to kind of run through the checklist, and I think you'll agree that they will happen if they haven't already occurred. So if you lose your data, expect a career change. Would anybody disagree with that? Major elements for a DR plan. Data backup recovery is right at the top of the list. After all, we are IT. We are the custodians and the caretakers. All mission critical systems. And this is where the RTO plan comes in, or RTR. What is the mission critical systems within your organization? And does management agree with you? Okay? They certainly will follow your lead. You're the professional. Financial operational assessments. Now, some of this gets out of your scope, understandably. And that's why it's so difficult to really build a true DR plan organizationally, because it involves the entire organization. But in your world, your department, your hemisphere, this is what you do control, at least certainly influence. And that's where your responsibility set really comes to play. So what type of disaster should I plan for? A lost file? Can a lost file be a disaster? I think we'd all agree it could be, okay? Corrupted data, a failed server, cybercrime, data theft, partial data center failure, data center wipeout, facility wipeout, pandemic. You know, all of these things have some impact organizationally, and specifically under Homeland Security, which all the municipalities, governmental agencies fall under, this is a requirement. This is something that is supposed to be in place, and your backup system, not only data, but personally, your role, who backs you up, what happens, and what's the succession of events that will occur if you're not available to lead the troops in the process. So are you prepared for a data center disaster? Well, you could get prepared with a 2-page plan. All right? It's a cover page and a resume. It's an interesting idea. Okay, it's an interesting idea, but it's not valid. Okay? The responsibility still follows you, okay? Certainly responsibility-wise to the organization, and at the same point, responsibility-wise to your career. Well, what's some of the challenges? Well, as if you guys aren't busy enough already, you know, the criticism I get of this slide is I don't have enough panels on it, all right? I mean, I've been in organizations where policy, legal policy was being made by consortiums of IT groups, specifically in the school districts. I've presented to school districts across the states, and those districts have their own little technology groups within their regions, and they're sitting there talking about Facebook policy. Well, really, Facebook policy has some tremendous legal obligations. Also has some real good leverages in the educational field. But why is IT left up to the fact that they are actually creating legal policy for the school districts? Okay? Not a good mix. But yet they take it on because they know it's got to be done. Steps in the recovery process. What's the first step that we have to really define? Well, the first step is really recovering our operational system, our operating system. Bare metal, as some would call it, system state, as others might call it. But really, that's a starting point. Would we agree to that? We've got to get those servers back into production. Now, truly, if you're in a replication world, great. Great place to be. You've got a server failover capability. But is it a backup recovery system? Is it a point-in-time recovery system? The answer to that is no, it's not. Okay, why would I say that? I would say that for these reasons. Typically, you've got a wire issue. You better have big enough bandwidth so you don't have latency between them. Well, most organizations end up putting that technology under the same roof. Well, all of a sudden, yes, I've got a server failover option here now. I did a good thing. But when it comes to a facility wipeout, right, I'm right back to scratch. Well, what if the data gets corrupted on the primary? Does it get corrupted on the secondary? The answer is absolutely yes. How much data corruption is actually evident in the industry? I was educated by an individual in the trading industry just last week. Anybody here running Windows 2003? I think there'd be a pretty good show of hands on that. Well, he's educating me on the fly about the inherent issue with Windows 2003 creating corruption. I'd never heard of it. And I've been around the industry for about 30 plus years. I asked him to please send me the link so I could share it. Haven't received it yet, but I would be happy to share it with CCC, and then you guys can check it out for your own self. So we got to start the recovery process on all systems. What does it include? The software, yes, the operating system, the applications, all the registries. You've got to do that. How long does that take? Well, let's look at a chart. But recovery applications is a key factor. So if I'm looking at mission critical, would we agree that these items would probably hit your list of mission critical with some ads? Internet, we have to be up on the internet. Would we agree to that? Yes. Email. How many consider email a mission critical app? I do. I can't live without it. It's actually a transaction processing system in many organizations. Office productivity, telephone system. I think all of those would fall right in that real critical spot. Then you kind of go down the line of business systems, in the manufacturing world, shop floor PCL equipment. For example, in a manufacturing world, just not to get off topic, but realize the fact that almost all those machines are computer driven. Realize that most of those machines, and probably 99%, are not backed up, okay? And organizations don't know if they can actually create a way to seamlessly back those systems up. Well, those are critical. Those are mission critical. Production stops, sales stop, revenue stops. Now, if I went about the process of restoring one single server manually, going through all the steps of getting the system state back in operation, what's the average time? Would most of you agree that about 8 hours is what it would take? I think some of you would say a couple days. I've heard people say they're still cleaning up a week later. Well, do the math. I'm pretty confident that for the majority of the group here, you've got more than one server. You probably have a dozen. You might have 100, if you count physical and virtual. You might have several hundred, depending upon your association and the size. So how long would that take in raw hours? Well, here's the numbers. They speak for themselves. Now, if you can cut those numbers, great. However, now, if you've got a DR plan in place that says you've got to be operational in 2 days, then let's just pick a number. Let's say you've got 20 servers. Well, you may even get system state up in that time, but you sure aren't going to get file recovery done. Would we agree? Okay? And I think we would. Yes, but I got a replication system and my apps are running. Well, that's good, because if you did that, you're right. In a fail server environment, you are. But what if it goes beyond the fail server environment? So how many levels of DR are you planning? You know, back to the list up on top here. Is your DR plan focusing on lost files, corrupted data, failed server? Is it also focused on data center wipeout? Is it focusing on a facility wipeout? You know, those are things that you have to peel the onion on and decide, you know, to what level should your DR plan go to. These are great talking points with management, if you aren't already having those discussions. Have you seen this message? Anybody ever seen this message come up? Is your backup and recovery system a box of parts that requires assembly? Well, surprisingly enough, most products out there are. You've got to take ownership of the entire assembly process and everything else that goes under the hood. Where's the risk? It's on you, the customer. Where's the support? Well, you've got multiple vendors involved, so you've got to factor those in. So at the end of the day, really it falls on your shoulders. Goes to backup past, present, and future. Fundamental challenges: disk capacity and bandwidth, primary versus secondary storage, data reduction techniques and reliability. Past, tape. Present, disk to disk and cloud era. Future, disk to disk to disk appliance era. 85% of the organizations interviewed still use tape. Now, you may have migrated beyond that, and congratulations if you have. But yet I would say there's a fair number of you probably still depending on tape technology to do your backup recovery. Well, Who says tape is unreliable? Well, let's talk about